What is up, everybody? It is Tuesday afternoon on the East Coast, still Tuesday morning on the West Coast, but hey, we're a little ahead over here. Either way, I got my guy Ryan with me, and there's so much to talk about. We're going to kind of put a cap on everything that happened this last week, but more so look forward to what's to come in the NFC Championship. I'm so excited for this game, Ryan. As you know, I'm going to be at the game. I'm going to be able to be on the field during the pregame, so I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a ton of fun. This is an experience that was almost missed because of the damn Green Bay Packers. I'm glad the 49ers are over that. I think this week might be a little bit easier, but we will see. We'll talk about it. We're going to talk about the Lions game, plus more next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday. That means I got my guy, Ryan G. Hensley, in the building. Ryan, what's up, my guy?
Not much, brother. How you doing today, man?
Oh, man, I'm so good. It's Victory Tuesday in the most important week that it could have come. Win or go home. And the 49ers almost went home, but they didn't. They won. We're still alive. Let's go.
Yeah, man. When are you coming out?
Saturday morning, I'll be there. So I'll be there Saturday morning, and then I fly out Monday morning. So short turnaround, but one that's very worth it.
Yeah, definitely worth it. That's got to be at least, what, 5.5 hour flight for you? 6 hours?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Man. All right. Look at you. This guy's diehard for sure, man, doing that. Absolutely.
Listen, it can't be any worse than my Thanksgiving trip where I spent 3 nights in a row in 3 different states all over the place and was in 4 different states throughout those 3 days, spending significant time. So if I can get through that, I think I could probably get through this just fine. Just fine.
Yeah, you got it. You got it for sure. And it'll be worth it. And hopefully they get a W. What's your record when you attend 49ers games?
In the Shanahan era, I'm 6-0.
Hey, that's a good sign right there. That's it. That's it. We're going to win for sure now.
I'm throwing that out there. Throwing that out there. It started in 2019, by the way, the year they went to the Super Bowl, and it was game 1 of that season here in Tampa. So pretty good record.
That's a good record. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, brother. Listen, so let's put a little bit of a recap on this last game and parlay that into this game. But based off of what you saw this last week and knowing that the NFC Championship should be a tougher opponent, or at least a tougher game, it means more because the chance of the Super Bowl is on the line. Who needs to step it up this week in order for the 49ers to continue this path to number 6?
Well, my first answer I want to say is Kyle, but when I'm talking about players specifically,
you can say Kyle. I'm fine with that because I agree.
I think I'm gonna save him, and feel free if you want to use it. Go ahead and use it. But I'm gonna save it for our last topic because I think that's the more pertinent topic for Kyle. But I will say one thing that I've noticed, and I checked the numbers on it, is Nick Bosa, 2021, 15.5 sacks, 2022, 18.5 sacks. This season, 10.5 sacks. And so that's the look, I know they had 22 pressures last week as a unit, the defensive line, which isn't bad, but they're not getting home. And this team is too talented. This pass rush is too talented, and Bosa makes way too much money not to be getting all the way there, not to be getting home, not to be notching actual sacks against our opponents. And they're going to have to do that. They didn't get any last week. They're going to have to do that. Not only for this Lions game, and Goff is basically a statue. So this is the chance to do it. Now, they do have a good O-line, so that, does come into play. But they got to get home against the Lions. And if they want to win a Super Bowl, they're going to have to do it the following game in the Super Bowl. So Nick Bosa and this entire D-line, and I'm looking at Steve Wilks as well, they have to get together and figure out what they need to do to actually get home against quarterbacks and actually not sacks, because it's extremely important. That's what this team is built around. That's what this defense is built around. And when you're not getting home, that puts your corners in situations where you don't want them. And that's not the strength of this team anyways. The strength of this team is supposed to be the D-line and that's what I want to see improve against the Lions.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, this defensive line has to get pressure with 4. That's what this team is built around. And when you have this many players that are first round draft picks,
right,
big time free agents, players you traded for, there's no excuse. No excuse that they're not getting home. Now, can Steve Wilkes do a better job of maybe mixing in stunts or showing blitz, even if he's not going to blitz and those types of things? Certainly. Of course he can. But they still have to find a way to get home. These guys are paid big money to do that. And if they don't get home in this week in particular, that's exactly what plays into Goff's hands. Goff is a statue, but if you don't get pressure on him, he will pick you apart. He's done it his whole career. If you get pressure on him and you move him off his spot, that's your chance to victory. That's how turnovers are forced with him. He gets very jittery in the pocket. He starts walking into sacks. They have to be able to get pressure and ultimately get home on him. And the thing about Goff is I believe he makes it easy to get home. If you get pressure on him, he just falls. He just gives up. Like he's not even trying to move around and navigate the pocket and throw downfield. He'll just give up. So I think just getting the pressure this week is enough to actually get home because he'll just fall right into sacks. So I agree with you on that.
And Wilkes, I feel bad for him a little bit because, he was trying these things in the beginning of the season, and the team basically said, "Hey, that's not what we do. We rush 4, right?" And now they've been doing what Nick Bosa and those guys spoke about, wanting to just rush 4, but it hasn't been translating into sacks. So puts Wilkes in a kind of an awkward position. Like, this is what you guys want to do. This is what we're doing. It's not working. So now maybe he needs to take that initiative and approach it with Kyle and say, "Look, guys, we're not getting home. We need to do other things, and at least like you said, run stunts, fake blitz, like do something different than what you've been doing because it's not working."
Yeah, I would say the other person that needs to step up is Ambry Thomas. And man, what an up and down stint he's had with the 49ers. I don't want to blame him entirely for some of the things that happened this last week. And I think that there were some other blown coverage issues and what have you, but he was a big part of that. And at the very least, you cannot grab and get pass interferences and all these other things. You have to be better. You have to. There's a reason that you're in the game. And the reason is that Oliver wasn't very good. And so Demo was able to slide into the interior, which meant he came to the outside and has played very good for the most part. But there's always that question that was there. And I really saw it when I was in person watching them play Tampa this year in Santa Clara. All game long, he was getting cooked and cooked and cooked. And they just didn't look his way. They didn't attack him. And I'm thinking to myself, man, if you just throw to Evans over there and take that one-on-one matchup, you're probably going to be pretty damn successful. And they didn't do it. And a lot of teams haven't done it. Last week they did it. Last week they seeked him out and tried to pick on him. I gotta imagine that Detroit sees that and they're like, okay, we got some guys. We got a speedster and Jamison Williams that we can go to. We can go to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who makes everybody look silly. Either way, we can get some matchups that we really like here, and we can attack Ambry Thomas. So Ambry Thomas has to play better, be less handsy at the catch point, and avoid these penalties at the very, very least. He's always in position. That's always been his thing. He's always been in position. And a lot of times he either gets mossed or he gets a penalty. But it's like, man, you're right there. Just get your eyes on the ball and try to make a play on it. I don't understand why you have to immediately grab or just get mossed every time. This is going back to his rookie year, but he's always in place. So it's like there's just that tweak that he has to make mentally, and I think he can really overcome it, but they cannot have him being a liability because teams will pick on him, and I think the Lions definitely will pick on him.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Another one I have would be Logan Ryan, if he's going to be starting. I'm not sure if they're going to roll with Logan Ryan again this week or if they're going to go back to Jair Brown. I'm not sure how they're going to approach it, but
I hope they go
Brown
back to Brown. Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems like Brown did a better job. I mean, Logan Ryan is a veteran. He has a Super Bowl, he's a Super Bowl champion. It just seems like he was just out of it. Like you could just tell he hasn't been playing football much at all. And he hasn't. He was literally on a cruise ship when the 49ers called him.
Right.
He just looks stiff and just not ready for the game right now. And maybe that game will help him get back in the groove in this following game. But I agree with you. I think I'd rather see Jair Brown out there.
Yeah, Rick, go ahead and shoot the question up. Go ahead and shoot it up. Listen, we've talked about it for all season long, man, and it's just, unfortunately, it's just not going to happen at this point. It's just not a good enough player. But man, McKivitz, dude, I don't think he needs to step it up necessarily, because I don't think he has that gear in him. But the game plan needs to step it up and getting Kittle to help block a little bit more, if that's what it takes. Something, at least get a bump and release, check and releases, those types of things, and get Kittle to get hands on, help, and then release out into patterns if you want him out in patterns. But they cannot allow him to go one-on-one over and over and over. That is a quick way to disaster, and I don't want to see it anymore. They just can't do it. On big third downs, they can't do it. They have to put hands on whoever it is that's over Colton McKivitz. Likely it's going to be Hutchinson, which is scary as hell. So they've got to get hands on him. They have to. And they have to help him out. They can't give him these one-on-one matchups. He can't hold up against these elite pass rushers.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe you would know more. You got that Lions friend of yours coming on the show, and that's going to be a great show, by the way. I'm looking forward to that. But I believe Hutchinson lines up on that side every time. Am I wrong, or does he switch sides?
I think he switches. I think I'd have to ask. I haven't watched a ton of Hutchinson, but I swear I've seen him lining up either way. I think they just try to get him good matchups.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a good one. And like you said, it's really on Kyle at this point to make that happen. You can't ask McKivitz to be a better player at this point in his career, right? Like, so it's definitely on Kyle. This is a Kyle thing for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, let's get to some of these super chats real quick. James, checking in over on your channel, says, if, and I mean if, we beat the Lions, what a coincidence that the two AFC teams left are the teams that beat us in our last Super Bowl losses, and they both look ready to play. I tweeted about this. I was a little bit more bold in my tweet, and I said, it looks like no matter what, we're going to have a chance to get revenge. And people are like, we got to beat the Lions first. And I was trolling and said, who? It doesn't compute. We're going to the Super Bowl. So, but you're right. Yeah. If they make it past the Lions, they have a chance at redemption, and that's pretty damn cool. And both those teams are very, very good.
Okay. Yeah.
Alex, AC from back home, AC from the 503 says, Purdy needs to get Ayuk involved early. Go Seahawks. He's a Seahawks fan, but I agree. Yeah. I mean, Brandon Ayuk needs to be involved more. It really did seem like that game plan was supposed to revolve around Debo, and once Debo went out, things were a little bit shaky. But I think getting Ayuk involved early is, I mean, you see it as a Seahawks fan, absolutely, especially against that secondary. He should be able to do work. He should be able to do a lot of work.
Yeah,
and I want to. Yeah, go ahead.
I've talked to some people that said that Ayuk was visibly frustrated in that last game with the lack of targets. Yeah, even after the game.
For sure. I'm sure that he was. Rick asked if we would answer the question. He says, do you think the quarterback that we have right now is a good quarterback? You know my answer. We have a good quarterback. All he needs to do is settle down and play football. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how you can't say he's not a good quarterback. Like, if you first of all, if you're a starting level quarterback, you're one of 32 people in the world. It's pretty amazing in itself. But yeah, he's definitely a good quarterback. I think the only time I push back is when people are like, let's throw him in that elite era. Like, he's elite now. Okay, it's gotta be, if that's what you want to do, but not me.
It's always got to be one or the other. Feels like it's either he's Joe Montana or he's Jimmy G 2.0. It's like, where's the balance here, right? Yeah, obviously Brock Purdy's a good quarterback. That goes without question. I think we just need more time to see what he develops into, because he is still developing. He's only his second year, and we'll see if he gets that upper echelon top 5 type player and or not. But he's definitely a good quarterback. I think that goes without question.
Yeah, absolutely. James says, Kyle, learn this concept. Plan B. Hell, even plan C. Learn it, love it, live it.
There's only plan A. There's only plan A with Kyle. It is what it is.
Listen, I wish it were that easy. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know why he seemingly can't adjust in these big moments. I don't know. I don't know. I really wish I had an explanation for it, but it almost bit them in the butt. And I said this on Sunday, and I stand by it. I felt like the 49ers won in spite of Kyle on Saturday. I really feel that way. I felt like they overcame their head coach in that game. Not that he's not a good head coach. I don't want people to mishear me. I'm not saying he's not good. I'm not saying fire him. I'm not saying, oh my gosh, they have a million better coaches they can go get. What I'm saying is, in that game, he did not coach his best, just like sometimes players don't have their best. He didn't have his best stuff, but he's the play caller, and I feel like they had to overcome him a little bit. That's
so basically, from everything I just heard you say, you want Jim Tomsula to be the head coach of the 49ers. But
correct. Yes. That's exactly what I said.
Good call. I just picked up from you.
Yeah. You're picking up what I'm laying down. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Jared Goff a little bit, because he's played the San Francisco 49ers quite a bit, being in this division at one time. And a couple years ago, as a Lion, he played the San Francisco 49ers week 1, if you remember that game.
Yeah,
I remember that one all too well. But Jared Goff started out his career 3-0 against the San Francisco 49ers. Since then, he's gone 0-5. Mm-hmm. That's the thumbnail. It said Owen, and it pointed to him, because he's 0-5 against the 49ers since then. Do you believe that that stat matters in this game?
No, I don't. I don't. Those type of trends don't really mean much to me, because this is a new game, right? It like whatever happened in the past with Jared Goff really is meaningless at this point, because this is a new team. I think they've only played Dan Campbell once, right? And if I'm not mistaken, they were up by quite a bit, and they almost came back and won in that game, or they made a push at least, right? Kyle took the starters out, and they started like totally like getting in the groove and coming back on the 49ers. But to me, it doesn't really matter. This is a different team than any team the 49ers have faced before against this Detroit team, right? This team is hot, man. They got a lot of new weapons. They got a bulked up offensive line. They got some really good young talent. They have a top running back in the NFL in Jair Gibbs. Gibbs, I believe, is 5th in yards per carry in the NFL, and CMC is 2nd. So CMC is 5.4 yards per carry. Gibbs is 5.2, which is good for 5th, the 5th best running back in the NFL. So 2 really good running backs going at it this week. This Lion team's different. I don't care what's happened in the past. Those trends to me are meant to be broken, so that they can't have any sense of false confidence like we got this guy's number. And it's really not just a golf record, right? That's what I like. Sometimes I like to bring this up, because I think a lot of people they always make it about the quarterback. That's also a Lions versus 49ers record that you're talking about, right? It's not just golf.
Well, really, a Rams versus 49ers record.
Rams,
because most of those games were the Rams, yeah.
Right. So it could be the Rams, the Lions, right? This is a different team. That doesn't really mean much to me personally.
Yeah. I actually think it does hold some weight, in the sense that they know exactly how to play Jared Goff, right? Like, they know the game plan. They know what they have to do. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to win. It doesn't hold water in the sense that they're for sure going to win because the last 5 times they've beat them. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it does matter in the sense that they know exactly what it takes to beat Jared Goff. They know how to get him uncomfortable. They know how to get him to panic play a little bit. And so they should have a good game plan for him. Now, you've got to execute on said game plan, and that's where it comes down to the players. They've got a good offensive line. 49ers have got to be able to overcome that. They've got a very good running game as well, something that Jared Goff for a big chunk of these games has not had in these matchups. So, yes, I think that it matters to the extent that they know how to beat Jared Goff. Now, when it comes to actually getting it done, that's a different story. I don't think it matters there. And I think that's what you're saying. So I think we agree, but there is some game plan things. They know what they're getting in Jared Goff, whether it was Jared Goff on the Rams, Jared Goff on the Lions. They know exactly what they're getting. Let's talk about Jared Goff just for a second, though, outside of this record. Do you feel like Jared Goff's a little bit underrated by fans across the league?
Oh, definitely, I do. Yeah, I think if you look at his numbers, they're very similar to Brock Purdy's. He's not as mobile. He's he's definitely a statue in the pocket. And, like to your point, like I think everyone knows what you want to do against Jared Goff, but only 5 teams have been able to do that this season, right? So 49ers got to get out and execute. I think Jared Goff is extremely underrated. If you look at the top 5 quarterbacks in production over the last 2 seasons, there's only one guy that's been consistent over the last 2 seasons in production, and that's Jared Goff. I think he's extremely underrated. I think he's done a fantastic job in this offense for the Lions. And I don't think he's to be taken lightly. I mean, people say, oh, he panics under pressure and he's a statue. And all that, it may be true, but he's 12-5 this season as a team, and he's been consistent over the last 2 seasons. So, 49ers got to get out and execute. I don't think it's a mystery what you got to do to Goff, but can you get it done? He's actually really good at getting the ball out really quickly, and this Lions offense has done a fantastic job of scheming those situations up for him. So, I mean, his stats are almost identical to Brock Purdy's outside of yards per attempt. So, it's like 2 yards difference, but that has more of a scheme offensive connotation than anything else. So if you think Brock Purdy is a really good quarterback, then I don't see how anyone can't think Jared Goff is a good quarterback. It doesn't make sense to me from a statistical standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's underrated, but I don't think he's great by any means. I think he's at his best. He's borderline top 10. And we've seen him do some amazing things. I mean, the shootout with Mahomes was fantastic. And I will say, I saw him play in college, a night game at Autzen Stadium, Oregon Ducks, Cal Bears, rain, cold, and he was not affected. He was throwing seeds all over the field. Very, very good. I was very impressed with him in person. I think that was his final year in college, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, he's got talent. He's got arm. There's not a throw that he can't make. There really is not a throw that he can't make. He's got a ton of arm talent. And if you give him time, he will get the best of it. It's funny because I call Eli Manning clutch Jared Goff. I think like stature wise and what they bring to the game is actually very similar. I think Jared Goff protects the ball a little bit more, but as far as the way that they're built, how they can make every throw, how at times they can be underrated as players, but they'll also just make that gut curling mistake at the wrong time. There's a lot of similarities between the two. I think Goff is a good quarterback, but I think that I think if anybody sits down and actually looks at Jared Goff and compares him to the rest of the league, they'd probably have him in that 12 to 14 range consistently. And I think that's where he belongs. I think that's totally fair. He does have some very good processing and he has a great arm, but I can't get over the panic sacks, man. I can't unsee it. I can't unsee it. So for me, I think that's about where he's at.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the quarterbacks a lot yesterday. I'm going to talk about it more. I got a show with Croc at 10:15, and I was going to talk about it more with him. But I was, I look at the quarterbacks throughout the NFL, and I have Brock Purdy at probably like 9th. I said 8th, but I think it's 9th without debate of guys I would take over him. But then it becomes debatable, and I think there's guys like, and I know this is a Niners show, and people are gonna, come at me, but it is what it is. I think guys like Jared Goff are in that conversation. Guys like Jordan Love are in that conversation. But I have 8 to 9 quarterbacks better than Brock Purdy. So I don't think Brock Purdy at 9 or wherever you have him versus Jared Goff at 12 or wherever you have him is much of a difference outside of the mobility.
It's so hard. To me, it's just so hard to weigh 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons versus a season, right? It's hard. Like, how do you weigh it? I mean, if you're talking now, in this moment, I take Brock Purdy over Goff, and I wouldn't even think twice about it. But in 4 years, if Purdy's career doesn't go with this trajectory and Goff's still doing it, I mean, at his peak, he was better, but was he better? No, he wasn't better. He was at his peak. He had a better peak, but overall, he wasn't a better player. So that's why these things take time to curate for me. And that's why when you look at quarterback rankings, there are 7 or 8 guys, usually around 7 guys that are consistently there in the top 10. Those are your guys. And then you got 3 or 4 that are always floating in and out of the top 10. You got your Jared Goffs, you got your Dax, you got your Kyler Murray, you got your Tannehill's done it for a year. You've got Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield can get in there for a season. Like the back half of the top 10 is constantly fluctuating. If you want to be a bona fide top 10 quarterback, you got to be in that top 7 range. And once you're there consistently, and that's what you see. But the back end of the top 10 is constantly fluctuating, constantly. So it's like season to season, game to game, week to week. These things happen. So it's so tough, man. It's so tough to have these conversations. But I personally think that if most people sat down and made a list, Jared Goff would be in that 12 to 14 range. And I think that that's fair. But is he underrated in the sense of just barbershop talk? I think most people that don't watch Jared Goff, especially 49er fans, I feel like have a warped view of quarterbacks because when they watch quarterbacks play, it's always against their defense. And the 49ers are always elite on defense. So they're seeing these quarterbacks at their potential worst, and they're like, that guy sucks. This guy's terrible. And it's like, well, of course, like against this defense, it was a bad game. But did you watch him the other 16 games? Because that's not who he is. It was a bad game against this defense, which this defense tends to do to a lot of quarterbacks. So you can't just look at that game and be, whatever. So I feel like there's a little bit of a warped view when it comes to quarterbacks and how they really rate. But Jared Goff, I think, is in barbershop talk underrated because most people would just say he's trash. And he's not. He's definitely not trash.
I think a lot of that comes from the rivalry that he was on the Rams. So a lot of that comes from that, right? A lot of Niner fans just refuse to give credit to players from our rivalry. So I think that plays in a part too.
Most certainly. James said, for all those saying we're going to walk on the Lions, Dan told you in his first press conference, I'm going to bite your knees off. He did. Yeah. He did. And his players have held true to that, unfortunately. Matthew Sanders. Oh, speaking of is it Walker? The corner? Not the corner, the safety there. Tracy Walker. Is he the one that's been taking out everybody's knees? I think it's Tracy Walker. I could be mistaken. Oh, yeah, no. Who was the kid out of Syracuse that was drafted like 2 years ago?
I know you're talking about, but I can't think of his name.
Chat, help me out. Help me out. He's like 2 years into his career. I think he came out of Syracuse. Kirby Joseph. Thank you, Joseph. That's what I was looking for. Kirby Joseph. Thank you. Tell me, 49er fans, you don't get flashbacks when you see him on the field with that long neck of Merton Hanks. Just saying. He's little Merton Hanks-ish in uniform. He's got that long neck. Just check it out.
I hope he doesn't come at Kittle the way he's been coming at all these other tight ends, man.
Me too.
That's something I'm worried about for sure. He needs to, man. It is kind of dirty what he's been doing.
It's
but
tough,
at the same time, the rules,
You're smaller.
Right? And the rules tell you can't go high in the head area, so you have to go low. I mean, those are the rules. It's just unfortunate because it's pretty dangerous.
It is. It's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Matthew says, Detroit going to come out swinging. We need TDs, period. Yeah, I think so. I think they'll get them. I really do. I think, again, weather aside, if the weather wasn't what it was, I think Brock probably crushes in that last game. And I think he'll probably do it this week. Weather should not be an issue. So I think Brock Purdy's going to have himself a game. I think that the 49ers offense is going to look a lot different and a lot more in sync, whether Debo plays or doesn't. Let's get to this Purdy stat. This was an interesting one. So this was DM'd to both of us by Tyler. Did I get that right? I think it's Tyler.
Yeah.
So Tyler DM'd this to both of us. We made a slight modification. We wanted to double check to make sure the stat was correct. And then we made a slight modification to it because he had just passing touchdowns and interceptions. We changed it to total touchdowns and total turnovers in these games, but the rest of the numbers remain the same. Why don't you read us these numbers? Because it was very, very interesting. And then let's talk about whether they hold any water when it comes to this game, much like Goff's record in that conversation.
Yeah, so Tyler sent us these stats, and we double-checked them and made our alterations. But he says Brock Purdy this year, when facing a team he didn't play last year, 5-4 record, 63.7 completion percentage, 12 touchdowns, 11 turnovers, 91.6 passer rating. Purdy this year, when facing a team he did play last year, 8-0, 7.4.5 completion percentage, 22 touchdowns, and only 2 turnovers, 131 passer rating. So he's laying out the difference between teams that he's faced before, teams that he hasn't faced before, and his records, his completions, his turnovers, his interceptions. And on the surface, it looks kind of alarming. And maybe you could talk about, but what I dove in a little deeper, and out of those 11 turnovers in that, so that the teams that he hasn't played, 5-4 record,
9 games, 5-4 record. Yeah.
11 turnovers. Out of those games, the 4 that he lost, that's where your 9 of those turnovers came from. So it to me, this isn't really what it appears on the surface. It is not really what it is. I mean, if you take statistics out of it, you just think about it, right? And I tweeted this out, I don't know, last night. Brock Purdy's played roughly 25 or so games, right? And he's had 21 to 22 good to great games, and only 3 to 4 bad ones I can think of. So this is to me a reason to be confident in Brock Purdy. I mean, basically 85% roughly of the 85% of the time, Brock Purdy's going to come out and have a good to great game. 15% of the time, he's going to have a tough game. So I think those are pretty good odds, and I think those numbers would probably be pretty consistent with the best quarterbacks in the NFL as far as good games to bad games. So on the surface, I understand why he was concerned about it when he first looked at these statistics, but when you actually dive in deeper, the majority of his struggles came on those 4 games that he lost. Those other 5 opponents that he never played before, he did fine.
Yeah, I think this is where stats get interesting, and I appreciate it, Tyler. I mean, you went deep on this one, and I think it's good. I think it's a cool little stat. Show that teams. What I actually kind of took from it was not any negative. I actually took the positive out of it and was like, hold on a second. So what you're telling me is the thought process was once the league catches up to Purdy will struggle. But reality of what we've seen is if we look at the positive side of this, is his second time or third time facing a team, he's actually gotten better versus those teams. They haven't gotten better against him. He's gotten better against them. It's pretty impressive, right? Like you gotta look at that glass half full. That's the way I look at that. When it comes to the other record, I do think it's interesting, but there's so much context. And this is why watching the games is so important. You can bend stats and make them whatever you want. You really can. And then there are a lot of stats that people genuinely don't understand, but they tout them as if they're gospel, but they have no idea what goes into them. The reality is, if you watch the games, game in and game out, you're right. I mean, Brock Purdy, out of his 25 games, has had maybe 4 bad ones. And even in the bad ones, there's only one game that I can think of where it was bad beginning to end. It just didn't get better.
The Browns, yeah.
No, not even that. It was the Ravens game. The Browns game, he had a good moment at least, right? When they needed it most, he was able to drive him down. Now, I will say, blessed by a dropped interception. All right.
And Brandon Ayuk.
But either way, I just want to say, at least in that game, you saw a good moment at a point in time, right? It wasn't just awful from beginning to end. The Ravens game is the only game that I can point to. The game against the Bengals and Minnesota, they were good until they weren't. So it's not like he's just been awful from beginning to end, and really any games outside of 1, maybe 2, if you want to give the Browns game. I'm fine saying that. I mean, that's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good. So there is some context in there. Yeah.
And here's another thing. Last year, when Brock Purdy went undefeated until he went to the Eagles game, all those teams he played, that was his first time playing them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was his first time playing all those teams last year. So there's really not a trend that I see from this.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But it is a fun stat. And I like it when people think outside the box to try to come up with stats to see if there's a good narrative around it. You know what I mean? Because sometimes there is. Sometimes there are stats out there that people are not diving deep into. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I only knew that against 2 high safeties, this was his whatever, okay, that's a real issue.
Right.
So yeah, those things can be important if you want to dive a little bit deeper into the statistics. So I appreciate anybody who reaches out and is like, hey, check this out. Tell me what you think. But I do agree with you. I personally look at that and say, interesting, but there's a lot of context in there. Now, the stat that I'm actually worried about, which isn't even a stat, I don't care what the numbers were, he hasn't been good in rain, period. He just hasn't. Anytime it rains, he's just not good. And that is concerning. It's not his hand size, because there are other quarterbacks in this league that play in the elements that have the same hand size that do just fine. It's interesting to me that Brock Purdy, I think his best attribute is his bulletproof mindset, but for some reason, moisture cuts through his mindset like a hot knife through butter. And you can tell it's mentally weighing on him. The fact that he came out with a glove, then as soon as he had one bad pass, he takes the glove off and he gets frustrated. During his dropbacks, he's consciously wiping his hand as he's That's a mental thing, man. It's all mental. It's not his hand size. It's not like it was extra windy, so his arm can't cut through a little bit of rain. It's not that. It's all in his mentals. And I'm curious to see if he can overcome it. I mean, that's
Here's an idea.
A little bit worrisome.
I got an idea. Practice in the rain. Kyle, practice in the rain, Brock. Like, stay after practice and throw in the rain, Brock, because if Kyle's not going to help you practice it, you got to do it on your own. Get a couple receivers to stay after, dump that ball in the water and practice. I mean, practice is the only way you improve at things. So it doesn't really make sense why they haven't done that yet. That's still mind blowing to me. But the good news is no rain in the forecast this weekend, and the Las Vegas is a dome.
Yeah, for sure. And that's so for this year, this run, it's not going to mean anything. But when you look at, you want this guy to be your franchise guy. I mean, these things got to be in consideration. It's not always going to be good, and they don't play in a dome. Now, luckily, they're not in the AFC. I mean, if he was asked to be the Bills quarterback or the Patriots or Jets or whatever, I don't know how I'd feel about that. Over here, NFC, I mean, until Chicago's good, Green Bay's good, Minnesota's in a dome. Really, it's like Chicago and Green Bay, like these, some of the cold weather teams that you got to deal with. Most of it's going to be warm weather, and you might get a little bit of moisture, but hopefully Seattle. It's not Seattle. Yeah, Seattle
might become a problem. If Seattle is any damn good, it might be a problem. Luckily they're not. But yeah.
But it's not like the AFC where it's like literally every team is outside and it's freezing cold and there's elements, there's ice, there's snow, there's rain, the AFC every single week you're like, dude, it's like 0 degrees and snowing or whatever, or 45 miles. This game this week between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and nobody talked about it because why? Because their arms cut through everything and they expect them to play good. 45-mile-an-hour crosswinds. 45-mile-an-hour crosswinds. And I watched these guys launch 55, 60-yard passes as if nothing was going on. That's not normal, man. That's not normal. Most guys struggle in those types of elements, and Purdy would be no different. So these are things that you got to consider long term.
Can we take a second to talk about the insanity? I know this isn't on the schedule here, but it's insane that people watch Josh Allen play that game as well as he did and walk away from it saying that it's on him or that Brock's better than Josh Allen because Brock made a game-winning drive and Josh Allen didn't. Watch the game. Stop looking at stats. Quit being a homer. It's absolutely ridiculous. If you don't appreciate Josh Allen as a quarterback, I don't know what to tell you, man. He's phenomenal.
I gotta say, I had multiple people, not one person, multiple people that I've had back and forth with about Josh Allen and Joe Burrow text me during that game and say, you were right. Josh Allen is way better than Joe Burrow. I'm like, thank you. That's all I've ever been saying. He is better than Joe Burrow. And I never thought it was particularly close, but anyways, I thought that was funny. Chris says outdoor games this year, the Lions have scored 21, 34, 26, and 13 points. Let's put up over 30 and go to Vegas, boys. Yeah, I think the 6 was the Ravens game. The Ravens, man, that defense and what they've done to some of these quarterbacks is whoa. Incredible. I mean, they made the Lions offense about as anemic as it possibly could. They made the Texans offense this last week look awful. They didn't score a touchdown. The Texans didn't score a single touchdown on offense. The only touchdown they scored was a special teams touchdown. And then they were in field goal position twice. They missed one and made one. That's crazy, man. Their defense is, and that was without Marlon Humphrey. That was without their best corner, and they still did that. That was crazy. So, but yeah, you're right. They're not the same. They're not the same away from the dome. I agree with that.
People are so. Oh my gosh, Matthew, I see your super chat. Jay, my guy, I see you in your comment. You guys are nuts. You guys are the biggest, and I love you, but you're the biggest damn homers. How could you possibly think Brock Purdy is better than Josh Allen? You're not watching. Take your Niner shades off and
They don't
watch.
believe he's actually better than Allen, do they? Those aren't real comments, are they?
Yes. I'd rather have Brock. I'd rather have Brock
better
than
at
Allen.
winning than Allen.
Guys, you guys.
Is he better than Allen? Let's not put is his contract or based off of where he was drafted. It's a straight up question. You're starting a team, you get to choose one of them. Are you taking Purdy or Allen? Period. You don't know the rest of your players, you don't know your coach yet. You're starting your franchise with the quarterback. Are you taking Purdy or Allen? And if your answer is Purdy, then I can't take that serious. I just can't. Flav says, why do you think Kyle refuses to run any sort of hurry up offense or pick up the tempo at all? Even if we are down or before half, it's annoying AF.
Only does it with Sam Darnold. Only does it with your boy Sam Darnold, Flav. I don't know.
You know what's interesting about that, Flav, is I remember when Jimmy was here, they would do it a little bit. And Jimmy was always comfortable in those moments. That's when Jimmy always played his best. I actually think Brock Purdy would play his best football. As good as he's been, I think he would play better in a hurry-up offense where he's able to just kind of call things out and play a little bit. Like, that's who Brock Purdy is, right? At the core of who Brock Purdy is, he's kind of like a draw it up in the sand, play some backyard football. He's got that style to his game, and it suits him very well. I think in a 2-minute warning, a 2-minute hurry-up type offense situation, Brock Purdy might play the best that you've seen him play. It is a little bit annoying. I agree. Trust Brock Purdy to get it done, man. Keith says, it might just be he can't throw in the rain. I heard Mike Irvin say Troy could never throw in the rain. It might just be his kryptonite. Yeah, possibly. That's the interesting thing is that, again, these are still small sample sizes. So as of now, he hasn't done it. He hasn't done well in the rain. Okay. Does that mean it's forever going to be the case? I can't say that, but it is something that I think it's mental and I think he can overcome it. We'll see. Keith Murphy, the unbeaten, says Breeze and Manning were terrible in weather. True. It's very, very true. I mean, that's what happened, right? Like Manning had to get those home games, the dome games eventually. And that's what was able to get some of those Super Bowl or that first Super Bowl victory. Matthew says, Ryan, I like Allen, but if he takes that check down on the last drive, they are 8 yards closer to a field goal, and maybe they get the first. Hero ball loses games.
Hold on.
Jesse. If Diggs catches a 55-yard rocket shot, like he's been complaining all year, I don't get the ball enough.
Yeah.
You get a moonshot thrown directly at you that puts you well within field goal range on the first play of that drive, and he drops it. And this guy is his best weapon, who I would argue at this point, I think you can argue Diggs isn't even a top 10 receiver, and that's his best weapon. Couldn't make a play in the biggest moment. Complains about Josh Allen all offseason. Doesn't show up. I want out of here. I don't get the ball enough. Well, guess what, Diggs? You had your shot, and he put it right on the money, and you dropped the church's money. That's on Diggs, man. That's on Diggs.
Let me say this one too, Matthew. So if you watch that play, and I feel like this is a symptom of Niner fans. They always want the check down, right? Because they're used to that. But look, if you watch that play, the safety had inside leverage on whoever that receiver. Who was the receiver that went deep for that touchdown that he threw? I forget who it was. But anyways, the safety had inside leverage on him, and he
was open.
He turned him all the way around. He turned him all. The guy had to turn all the way around. He was wide open. It was just his throw was just off. That was a touchdown.
Got hit in the shoulder. He got hit in the shoulder as he was throwing, but the read was actually the right read. He was going for the win right there. That would have been the win.
And had he connected,
possibly,
that was a win.
They would have had the lead, I should say. They instead of being tied, they would have been up 4. So they would have been up 4 in that moment. And then, let's see what Patrick does. Likely Patrick does what Patrick does, and they still win, but whatever.
There was
the right play was to throw a freaking touchdown. He was right there, and he got hit in his shoulder, and the ball was off. Like, what are you going to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
If he makes that throw, nobody complains.
I think I think Texas Niner, he's mad. He calls me a clown, but I'm being facetious a little bit because we're used to Jimmy Garoppolo, who is the check down king. We've had him for 5 or 6 years. Definitely not a clown. Don't say things you want to say to my face, but in general, I was joking there, buddy. But what I'm saying is we're not used to Josh Allen's, right? That was the right decision, a throw that he's perfectly capable of making. Jesse said he was hit on that throw. It was off a little bit, but it was a perfect decision that could have won them the game. I have no problems with that play there.
Yeah, I forget who it was that put pressure on him, but he definitely backed the left tackle into him and it threw off his motion. But I didn't have a problem with the decision. Keith Murphy, the unbeaten, says Joe Burrow would have taken that check down. Okay. Are you taking Joe Burrow over Josh Allen? Matthew Sanders says, I don't think BP is better. Josh screwed the pooch. Did he though? Okay, let's say he did. He's still not better than he's still one of the top. At worst, you have him number 3. Maybe I could hear somebody say number 4 if you have Burrow and Lamar ahead of him or whatever. We're still talking about a top 4 quarterback at worst. At best, you're talking about the second best quarterback in the league. That's what we're talking about here.
Let me ask you guys this too.
I don't understand. I just don't understand how. I don't know. It's just crazy to me. I guess this is where I draw the most issue, guys. And I'll be honest with you. 49er fans are so upset when people go at Brock Purdy and they're haters and they don't watch the games and they're coming up with false narratives and all these things. But yet in a moment where you go to defend Brock Purdy, instead of just defending him and saying, hey, this is a BS narrative, let me show you why, you go and you take Josh Allen or another quarterback and do exactly what you're upset people are doing to Brock Purdy. Make that make sense. Like you can't be upset that somebody's doing these things to Brock Purdy and then taking a guy who's a bona fide top 4 quarterback, probably the second best quarterback in the league, and start to pull him under the water. That's like, what's the whole thing about crabs in a boiling pot? Instead of just getting out, they like pull each other down. Like that's what you're doing. You can't be upset about what people do to Brock and then do exactly the same thing to a guy who is established in this league as an elite quarterback. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Perfect example of what you just said, Jesse. In the Browns game, well, Brock Purdy put him in the position to win, and Moody didn't make the kick. And then in the Bills game that we just watched, oh, you can't blame the kicker for that loss. Josh Allen didn't come through in the clutch, right? Which one is it? It's bias. It's homerism is what it is.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. And it's frustrating that you feel like people are taking shots at Purdy. I'm not saying don't be frustrated. I'm just saying don't then drag somebody else down to prop Purdy up. You don't have to do that. There's so many things you can say about Brock Purdy to prop him up without tearing down somebody else. It's just the way that I see it.
That's my problem. And I'm sorry, we're going a long time on this one, but that is my problem with a lot of this Brock Purdy narrative. It's like he either has to be Joe Montana or people on the other side saying he's absolutely trash. And Josh Allen can't be good because that means Brock Purdy's not. It's just, it's crazy. The quarterback talk is crazy. Honestly, it is.
Yeah. Frank Tom Ocean says, I love Purdy, but I'm taking Allen over every active quarterback. Not Mahomes. I'm not taking him over Mahomes. I love Josh Allen too, but I'm not. I can't say every active quarterback. Flav says, I think Brock has to rely more on timing and anticipation than any other quarterback due to arm strength. When it's raining, all the timing with receivers and his accuracy isn't there. It makes him more timid. I think that's fair too. I think that's actually fair because I don't think it's a. I think his arm strength cuts through the rain. Like as long as it's not windy, that's not going to be an issue. But what you're saying is they're slipping, and all it takes is an eighth of a second to throw things completely off, right? So for me, I can see what you're saying here, where it's like, okay, well, if Ayuk comes out of his route and instead of making a clean break, he's slipping slightly, now things are thrown off. And you kind of saw that in the Kittle throw, I think, where he had Kittle or he had the window, made actually a very good throw. And I think in dry weather, most likely that's a catch in a hell of a throw and a great run. But in that scenario, Kittle slipped just enough and it threw it off. So yeah, okay, that's fair. That's totally fair. Flav says also, Brock's from AZ, probably never had to play in the rain growing up. Think he just doesn't have a lot of experience with it, not so confident. Yeah, he did in college. He definitely did in college, but you're saying like growing up as a kid, certainly. And it's hard, man. It's hard. Throwing a football in the rain is not easy. I'm not trying to act as if it's easy. And I mean, at no point did I even in the post game, I didn't even rip Brock for the game. Like it's factual at this point. He just doesn't play well in the rain. for one reason or another, and they got to figure it out. They do got to figure it out. Keith says, yes, I've seen Burrow, best Patty, and hell no, Brock isn't close to Josh. You have meatheads in the chat. We're all meatheads to a certain extent, Keith. I think we're all meatheads to a certain extent. We talk sports all the time, and this is what we love. So whatever. But that being said, I'm
no meathead.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you want to take Burrow over Allen, sure. I vehemently disagree, but whatever. James Welsh says, if Allen was on the Niners, I'd cry. Finally, we've got one. We might get one anyways. James, that's the great thing. We might get one anyways. And the real question is not Brock Purdy, is Brock Purdy elite, or is he, better than X quarterback? The real question is he good enough to win a Super Bowl? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. I think it's a resounding yes. And I think we might see that come to fruition this year. That's ultimately what matters.
2 good games from Brock Purdy. The games that we've seen from him doesn't have to be anything better than we've ever seen from him. If you just take, the average of Brock Purdy, which is good. If you take 2 good games from Brock Purdy, the 49ers can win a Super Bowl. That's it.
I agree.
And the odds are in favor that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, one thing that might derail that a little bit in the NFC Championship is Deebo Samuel not playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's 50-50 is what we've heard. Now, we're going to know more tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's no break in the shoulder, but I believe it is the same shoulder, and it comes down to pain tolerance. I don't want to speculate on whether he plays or not because we just don't know yet. But if he doesn't play, right? If he doesn't play, how do you think that impacts the 49ers? And do you expect that the 49ers still overcome this and win the NFC Championship?
I will speculate he's absolutely going to play. I'll say that. Okay, I will say that, Jesse. I'm sorry, man, but he's going.
I think he's going to play too. I think he's going to play too.
Yeah, he's going to play. Kyle Shanahan is slow playing this thing, right? Like, why say Deebo's going to play now if you don't need to, right?
No, it's fair. It's totally fair. Totally fair.
Nothing's broken. From what I understand, it's pain. They have medicine for that. Deebo's not going to sit out the NFC Championship game because of pain. They're going to inject him with whatever they need to inject him with. He's going to be out there playing in the game. Now, if for some reason he's unable to play, that definitely changes the game. If they knew for sure he wasn't going to be able to play, they shouldn't, or if there's any chance of it, they should plan and script this coming game with that expectation, because we saw what happens when Kyle Shanahan expects Deebo to play and he doesn't. At minimum, Deebo should be a decoy in this game. At minimum, he should be a decoy out on the field. Deebo is absolutely going to play. Mark my words, Deebo Samuel will play this coming week. But, whether or not he's the main focal point because he's nursing that injury or not, I don't know. But he will be a decoy at minimum.
Well, I mean, you got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the other side, and they had some good fun week 6 and 7. So I'm looking forward to see that matchup as well. That's a fun one for me. That reminds me of like Aqib Talib and Michael Crabtree. I don't know if it'll get to like snatch your chain type of situation mid-game, but it's definitely one of those things that these guys have been chirping back and forth. And this is the unfortunate thing is even if Deebo's out there and he's not 100%, he might just be a decoy. But Deebo in these games where he's facing somebody who he has a little bit of heat with,
what's the record? What is the record of teams? What's the record when people talk crap about Deebo? What's the record against those guys the next time they meet? I don't think he's lost. Like every time someone talks trash about the 49ers or Deebo, and then they play the Niners and Deebo, they get their ass kicked. So
and Deebo balls. That's the most important thing is Deebo, whether they win or lose, Deebo does everything he can to win those games, and he absolutely comes through in those games. So if he was fully healthy, I would expect a huge game from him. I'm not necessarily expecting that. I do think he will play, but what I actually want to talk about is what you kind of glossed over there. And I think is the most important aspect of this is game plan as if he's not going to be there, because here's what I can see happening. I can see him playing, and I can see a scenario where he gets hurt and has to leave the game and isn't able to finish it. And if that happens, you can't have a scenario where you're running Jawan Jennings to start the second half. That can't happen. So game plan as if he's not there, and if he's there, great. You can use that. And also if he is hurt, even if he is able to play, you're probably not going to want to run him between the tackles. I don't think that's ideal for a guy with a hurt shoulder who's going to have to play below his pads and meet linebackers head on. So for me, I think that's the absolute right thing to do. Game plan is if he's not there, and if he's there, it's all gravy. But if you lose him, not a big deal either.
Can I say something a little bit controversial and maybe irresponsible real quick?
Oh,
This has
maybe.
nothing. This
Got to
has
remember this
nothing to
on
do
my
with.
platform too.
This has nothing to do with Jesse. It's not his opinion. But Debo sometimes reminds me of the boy who cried wolf a little bit. He's always down, and then he's always fine. I know. Like, look, maybe it's because he runs more physical and tough than everyone else. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe because he is so physical and he's so tough that he always puts himself in these situations where he's get injured. But I have noticed he goes down a lot, and then he's fine. He goes back in. So I don't know if this is he's tougher than everyone else because he's able to do that and bounce back from these injuries. I don't know, but I have noticed that, and I do want to say it again. It's my opinion, not Jesse's. My observation, not my opinion, just an observation I've made.
Well, listen, I know how these things run wild when these opinions come out. Somehow I became the guy that said dink and dunk on Twitter, which didn't happen. But yeah, I did, I guess. So I want to make it clear. I do not endorse the opinion of Ryan G. Hensley when it comes to this. I actually, here's what I will say. He does get nicked up a lot. I think there are times where Debo will play hurt a little bit because he's tired, because he just got the ball on a physical tough run, and he's like, you know what, man, I just need a breather. And so I'm going to lay here for a second, and I've got a little bit of a cramp or whatever, and I'm going to take this one and sit this one out. Then I'll sit out the next play and I'll be good to go. I definitely could kind of see where you're coming from on that. But I think Debo, to me, one thing I want to make clear, and I don't think you're necessarily doing this either. Maybe you are, and you can clarify, but I'm not going to question his toughness. I think if he's able to play at all, he'll definitely play in this game.
Again, I think it could be a symptom of his toughness, actually, because he's playing so physical, and sometimes I feel like Debo just needs to go down. Honestly, like, I know that's what we love about him, is that he runs through all these tackles, but there's times where it's like, dude, just go down at this point. You got like 5 dudes holding you up. You're not going to go through it. And I remember he got injured last year. I forget what game it was. Maybe it was against the Rams, where he was obviously, dude, you're not going to go anywhere. And he kept pushing, kept fighting, and he hurt his ankle, I believe, in that game. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's just he always seems to be banged up. He's a banged up player on the 49ers over the last 2 years. And so I don't know what it is. I don't know if he's playing through injury or he's trying to stay up for too long. I don't know what it is, but I always notice he goes down and then he pops back in. Maybe it's really a symptom of his toughness is what it is.
Yeah, I think him, George Kittle, both, even CMC to a certain extent, there are times where it's like, dude, just go down. Like Debo, this play will always stand out to me. It was the Arizona game, week 5, a couple years ago. He gets thrown a little crosser, and clearly he's got nowhere to go. He should just walk out of bounds. And he gets to the sideline and then looks at the corner in front of him and just pop shots him and then walks out of bounds. And it was like, so unnecessary, so unnecessary. And you're going to get hurt if you're constantly doing those things, but that's who he is, you know? And so there's the fine line of players and what makes them special. And how do you dial that in without stripping them of that completely? Those are the hard conversations to really have. And Debo Samuel is one of those guys where it's like, man, that's who he is. What do you do? Mm-hmm. All right. James says, no, I meant finally we got a real top quarterback. Okay, he's clarifying a super chat from earlier. Flav says, in a vacuum or starting a team, of course you would take other dudes over Brock. But for this team and in this system, assuming it's not raining, I think it's actually tough to be better than Brock was. I don't disagree with that. I think Brock played fantastic in this system with everything that it was, but that's not how you gauge quarterbacks. The quarterback conversation is just simply who's better. And the way you do that is
watch.
It's no different than going to your local 24-hour fitness, YMCA, wherever you hoop, and picking your starting 5. You watch people play, you watch people warm up, and you take who you think is better. And if you're starting a team and you are picking players, that's who's better. Like, just who are you taking? It does. I don't care about contract. I don't care about this system or that system or whether or not whether. I don't care. None of that stuff. Just who are you taking? It's a very straightforward question. And again, I've had this conversation in the past, and I'll say it again. People really struggle to not say Brock Purdy is on the level of some of these guys. And so they make a lot of weird stipulations. And it happens in the chat on a regular basis. It happens on Twitter. It happens on shows that I have with other people or shows that I watch of other people where they're asked a very direct question. Who's better? And it's always, well, on this team, or well, with this contract, or well, he was the last pick. No, just who's better. It's so simple. Yeah. It's so simple. If I ask you who's better between, example, the Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, nobody has a problem saying, oh, Burrow or Allen or whatever. Regardless, right? It doesn't involve Brock Purdy. You have zero. You're not. Well, I mean, are they? Is it indoors? Is it on the Cincinnati? Is it on Buffalo? No, it's just who's better. People will answer that very directly. But the moment I say, okay, so are you saying Brock's better than Josh? Well, I mean, in this system, okay. So basically, you're saying no, but you're trying to find a way to say yes. That's really what's happening.
Jesse,
so,
Jesse, what's funny about your scenario you brought up about a pickup game, right? You're playing basketball at a pickup game.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't pick the best player; they pick their buddy, right? And that's kind of what it seems like people do with Brock, right? That's their buddy. They want to play with their friend, right? They want to play with the guy they know, but he's not necessarily the best guy, right? So I just picked that up in your scenario there.
Oh, Keith said meth head, not meathead. Well, that changes things. Not a meth head.
Definitely.
That definitely changes the scenario, Keith. Yeah. Maybe I should read. I should probably learn to read English. That's probably a great starter. Dale says, for the next question, please explain why to continue to do short kickoffs with the leg of Moody. He's supposed to drill it out of the end zone. Thoughts? I completely agree with that. That was like one of the big things on draft night when I was like, I don't like the pick. Everybody's like, yeah, but he'll kick it out of the back of the end zone. Okay, but he doesn't. Yeah. Nico to the P says, people defending BP, man, I just want a Super Bowl. I agree. I think if we all just want a Super Bowl, ultimately, that's all we really care about is can we get a Super Bowl? So that's what it comes down to. All right. Final topic. We had this conversation last week to end the show, and maybe some of those questions were answered. But when you look at this team going into the NFC Championship and hopefully eventually a Super Bowl, what open questions do you have about them?
There's only really one, man. Like, for whatever reason, I guess it's because I said dink and dunk last year, but for whatever reason, I'm labeled as a Brock Purdy hater. I don't hate Brock Purdy at all. I think Brock Purdy is, like I said, he's in that 8 to 10 range right now in his second year, which I think is a really good place to be in your second year, man. So I like Brock Purdy. I'm not worried about Brock Purdy. I think a lot of people are. I'm not one of those guys that's worried about Brock Purdy. The thing that worries me the most about moving forward in this NFC Championship game and hopefully into the Super Bowl is a dude named Kyle Shanahan. And whether he can come through in the clutch moments and coach his ass off, out-coach Dan Campbell this coming week, or out-coach John Harbaugh if they play the Ravens, or Andy Reid if they play the Chiefs. That is my biggest concern with this team, and it's the question I want to see answered. Can Kyle come through in the clutch with a good game plan? If he needs to make adjustments, can he make those adjustments? Can he manage the game well? If there's a challenge flag that needs to be thrown, will he throw it? Is he going to run a hurry-up offense if he needs to run a hurry-up offense? Is he going to drain out the clock and be too conservative when you got Dan Campbell going balls out, trying to win the game, and you got Kyle just trying not to lose? Can he overcome that? That's the biggest question I have for the 49ers team right now moving forward.
Seems to be a pretty regular conversation. Kyle in the playoffs, kind of getting tight, getting anxious, right?
Right.
And I agree. I think that's definitely a big question. My hope is, Ryan, is that fairly, regardless of why he was here, I mean, ultimately he was the reason why Jimmy was here, but fairly, I don't know how confident I would have been if I was coaching and calling plays for Jimmy Garoppolo. And then now you've got a young quarterback in Brock Purdy who has been fantastic. Maybe Maybe he just needed to see what he saw on Saturday, which was that come from behind victory, kind of overcoming him a little bit, to be frank. I mean, he overcame Kyle a little bit to win that game. Maybe that, as bad as it was, as frustrating as it was in the moment, maybe that moment, that final drive is enough for him to be like, okay, I can relax a little bit and just call this thing. He is as good as what I thought he was in the regular season. He is the player that I made the starter week 1 for a reason. He's all of those things. And just because it's playoffs, it's not going to change. It doesn't have to change. I can call plays loosely and know and have the confidence that Brock Purdy is going to do what it takes to execute said plays. I'm hoping that's the scenario and we see Kyle Shanahan coaching much looser. I'm not gonna say that's gonna happen, but that's my hope. That's what I'm hoping to see.
Here's the reason why I don't feel better about that, even though I understand what you're saying. There's a fellow by the name of Matt Ryan who was up 10 points in the Super Bowl on the Atlanta Falcons, and Kyle choked in that one too. So it wasn't just under Jimmy and the 49ers where he chokes. He did it on the Falcons as the offensive coordinator. He's got that to prove, and I hope Kyle Shanahan can prove that to everybody that he is clutch, right? Like, Brock Purdy's not my concern. It's Kyle, man. Can he pull this thing off? That's really what my concern is moving forward.
Yeah, I would say the other open question I have is, listen, I think Moody was gifted and kind of given an out with that blocked kick. First of all, it was low. Second of all, I think it ends up missing to the left anyways.
Yeah.
I still don't trust Jake Moody. I don't, especially on anything like 45 and under. It seems like when he kicks long, he just doesn't think about it. He just puts everything into it, and he's pretty successful. But for some reason, man, those not chip shots. I don't want to act as if a 45-yard field goal is a chip shot by any means, but anytime it doesn't require his full leg to go into that thing, man, he just gets in his head. And
yeah.
I could be wrong, but you guys tell me that final drive of that first half, when they panned in on Moody with around 14 seconds left, did that look like somebody that was confident to you? He looked like a deer in the headlights, like, oh God, I mean, am I going to have to go out here and kick this thing? And sure enough, it ends up blocked, and everybody's like, well, it was blocked. It wasn't his fault. I actually blame Kyle more for the drive because they should have gone for the touchdown, and I think they probably would have gotten it and maybe put that game away. That being said, Moody did get his opportunity. It was blocked, and I think he was bailed out a little bit by that block. I don't trust Jake Moody still. I'm sorry. I don't. It took, regardless of what happened, we went from Robbie Gould and talking about he's never missed a field goal in the playoffs and all of his playoff games. He's perfect. He's perfect. It's perfect. It took one try from Jake Moody to miss a kick. I don't care what happened. He missed the kick regardless. You can give him the out that it was blocked. I think it was a low kick. I think it would have missed anyways. Either way, one kick, he was 0 for 1. That's all it took. And just his demeanor on the sideline going into that kick, I didn't like it. I don't think that we're looking at a confident player right now in Jake Moody. So I have questions. If these games get tight and they need one from him, will he deliver? Will he deliver?
Here's the thing about that kick, brother. Like, they didn't push into the backfield, right? They didn't push the protection backwards and block that kick. They just jumped up from where they were and blocked that kick. There's no way that's possible if the kick is kicked with the right trajectory. That means it was a low kick. It was also to the left. It wasn't going to go in. That's 100% on Moody. And one of my fears this whole season is that the season comes down to Jake Moody and he can't perform. I'm hopeful he can. I really do. But you'd be crazy not to be concerned with that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's like it's funny how when players haven't done something or they've failed at something, we automatically assume they can't do it. Right. Like the whole can Brock Purdy come from behind, or can, to me, again,
at some point,
that was a team question. That was not a Brock Purdy question. For me, that was a 49er question. Like, can Kyle do it? Like, his teams haven't done it. And there's a large sample size. Brock Purdy not doing it against the Browns wasn't long-term evidence that he was never going to be able to do it, you know, or whatever game you want to point out, or just because he hasn't been in that situation wasn't long-term evidence he wasn't going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that Jake can't do it. I'm just saying it's a question for me right now. I do question it, and I think it's fair to question it. It's absolutely fair to question whether he can consistently make these kicks time in and time out. That's really what it comes down to. Time in and time out. Can he make these kicks in the playoffs? I don't know. We'll see. If he has to kick 4 more times field goals over the next 2 weeks, are you confident he goes 4 for 4 regardless of where they're at? I'm not. So I want to see it. That's basically it.
Hey, maybe he'll be the hero. Maybe he'll win the Super Bowl.
Maybe that's it.
For all we know,
that doesn't mean he can't do it. I just I don't believe so right now. I got to see it. I got to see it. Yeah. Keith Murphy unbeaten says rather see Beemore or Kansas City.
I'd rather see the Ravens.
I mean, I'd probably rather see Kansas City, but that's weird to say with Patrick Mahomes on the other side. I think Baltimore is the better team than Kansas City. I think they're going to beat Kansas City. I really do. I thought Kansas City was going to beat Buffalo. I just think that Baltimore is just they're too put together, man. That team is stacked. They're humming. They've got a fantastic coaching staff from head coach to offensive coordinator to defensive coordinator. They've got tons of depth. I mean, you look at their 5th corner started in this league for multiple years and is not old. Their 3rd safety is going to get paid big time money this offseason and led the team in picks. Like this team is absolutely deep, man. They're stacked, and they're going to have Andrews back for sure for the Super Bowl, probably this week. You would assume that Marlon Humphrey would for sure be back for the Super Bowl, probably this week. I mean, that's a team that's still not even at full tilt. So it's like, yeah, man, the Ravens, I think, are just, I don't see Kansas City beating them as great as Patrick Mahomes is. I think that this is Baltimore's year to make it, and we'll see if the 49ers can get it done when they're there. But I think Baltimore's just the better team, man.
I'd rather see Baltimore. We disagree on this, so I'd rather see Baltimore. Patrick Mahomes scares the hell out of me. He's maybe the greatest quarterback of all time, honestly. And that defense is turned up this year. And we saw what happened when he came to Levi's and ate us up. We saw what happened in the Super Bowl.
For sure.
You take away those interceptions by Brock Purdy, that Baltimore game is completely winnable. I don't know if this.
You just can't take away interceptions. Like I just can't get. If you just take away 4 interceptions,
no. Like, that's not what I'm saying.
I can't do that.
What I'm saying is the game plan for the Ravens was bad, right? If you run the ball more and you don't put Brock Purdy in those situations, like my point is, do you really think Brock Purdy's going to come out and play the Ravens and throw 4 interceptions? I don't think.
No, but do I think he's going to get out of there clean? I don't think that either. I think he's going to give him at least 1.
Probably
do
not. Yeah.
1, maybe 2. Yeah. And I think that's it. I mean, all it takes is 1, you know, if you're going to have an interception, depending on the moment and what happens, that could be the difference. And I don't think he'll get out of there with a clean game in that scenario. I'm not saying they don't win. That's not what I'm saying, but I don't think he gets out of there clean. He threw too many interceptable passes the first time around. Just too many for me to believe that he gets out of there clean. Matthew Sanders says Baltimore looks unstoppable. Rather see Kansas City. We can get them. I think the 49ers can beat either of them. And I think both of them are scary for their own reasons. I just would prefer to play Kansas City. Keith says Green Bay had to use their rookie kicker, and we didn't, for sure. All right, Ryan, I know you got a show. I got to get out of here as well. You guys, golly, you guys are just so over the top. You guys have a blessed rest of your day. I will talk to you guys this evening. I'll be back with Sunil. See you then. Peace.